You will not believe what happens to the girl at the end. Make sure to like and subscribe so we can continue writing stories like this one. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below.
Anna clutched the worn photograph, its edges softened from countless caresses. The man in the picture, Caleb, had a kind face, a strong jaw, and eyes that crinkled at the corners as if perpetually amused. He was her future, her ticket to a life far removed from the cramped, smoky factories of her homeland. She'd pored over his letters for months, each carefully crafted sentence painting a picture of golden fields, clear skies, and a sturdy cabin waiting to be filled with love and laughter. The train rattled onward, each click of the wheels echoing the nervous flutter in her stomach. The American West. It sounded so vast, so untamed, so different from anything she had ever known. She imagined herself walking beside Caleb hand in hand through fields of wheat that stretched to the horizon. She pictured children with his eyes and her spirit running barefoot through the tall grass. She dreamed of a home filled with the aroma of baking bread and the warmth of a crackling fire. Her small trunk, tied securely with rope, held all her worldly possessions, a few simple dresses, a worn shawl knitted by her grandmother, a set of mending needles, and a small, leather-bound book of poetry. These were the tools she would use to build her new life, to weave a tapestry of happiness in this unfamiliar land. Anna had learned English from a patient schoolteacher in her village, spending hours memorizing phrases and practicing her pronunciation. She knew she still had an accent, thick and unfamiliar to American ears, but she hoped her genuine smile and eagerness to learn would bridge any language barriers. She imagined Caleb waiting for her at the train station, his smile mirroring the one in the photograph. She'd recognize him instantly, she was sure. And he would see in her eyes the hope and determination that had propelled her across the ocean, away from a life of hardship and towards a future filled with promise. The other passengers on the train, mostly grizzled men and weary-looking women, paid her little attention. They were headed west for their own reasons, each carrying their own burdens and dreams. But Anna felt a kinship with them, a sense of shared purpose. They were all pioneers, forging new paths in a land that demanded courage and resilience. As the train chugged closer to her destination, Anna's heart pounded with anticipation. She smoothed down her dress, straightened her hat, and took a deep breath, steeling herself for the moment when she would finally meet the man who held the key to her future. She was ready to embrace this new life, to work hard, to love deeply, and to build a home in the heart of the American West. She felt a surge of optimism, a belief that anything was possible if she just dared to dream. Her journey had been long and arduous, but she knew with unwavering certainty that it was just the beginning. The best was yet to come. Or so she thought. The train screeched to a halt, the sudden silence amplifying the frantic beating of Anna's heart. She gathered her trunk, her hands trembling with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Stepping onto the dusty platform, she scanned the crowd, her eyes searching for the kind face from the photograph. But there was no Caleb. A wave of disappointment washed over her, quickly followed by a surge of anxiety. Perhaps he was delayed? Maybe the train was late? She waited, pacing nervously, for what felt like an eternity. The other passengers disembarked, greeted by loved ones, and slowly dispersed, leaving Anna alone on the deserted platform. Finally, she approached the station master, a gruff man with a walrus mustache and eyes that seemed to hold a lifetime of weary stories. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I am looking for Caleb Miller. He was supposed to meet me." The station master frowned, scratching his chin. "Miller, you say? Don't rightly know any Miller round these parts. You sure you're in the right place, missy?" Anna clutched the letter in her hand, the address clearly printed in Caleb's familiar script. "This is where he said to come. He is expecting me. I am his bride." The station master's eyes widened slightly, and a flicker of something that might have been pity crossed his face. "Well, I'll be a mail-order bride, eh? Look, missy, I don't know what to tell you. Ain't seen hide nor hair of Caleb Miller in weeks. Folks been sayin' he took off, headin' south, lookin' for gold." Anna's world seemed to tilt on its axis. Taken off? Gold? Her carefully constructed dreams began to crumble around her, like sandcastles washed away by the tide. The station master, sensing her distress, offered a curt gesture towards a dilapidated wagon parked nearby. "That there's Old Man Hemlock. He sometimes takes folks out to the settlements. Might be going your way." Numbly, Anna thanked him and dragged her trunk towards the wagon. Old Man Hemlock, a wizened figure with a face like a crumpled road map, eyed her with suspicion. "Miller's place, you say? That's a good few miles. And he ain't there, you say?" Anna nodded, tears stinging her eyes. He is gone. The wagon lurched and swayed along the dusty track, each bump and jolt a painful reminder of her shattered hopes. The landscape, once so appealing in Caleb's letters, now seemed bleak and unforgiving. Finally, they arrived at a small, dilapidated cabin, surrounded by a barren field overgrown with weeds. The door hung crookedly on its hinges, and the windows were dark and empty. This was it. This was the home she had dreamed of. Old Man Hemlock unloaded her trunk with a grunt. "This is as far as I go. Good luck to ya, Missy. You're gonna need it." Anna stood alone, the silence broken only by the mournful cry of a distant coyote. The cabin was empty, the field was bare, and her groom was gone. She was alone, in a strange and unforgiving land, with nothing but her small trunk and the shattered remnants of her dreams. The reality was stark and brutal. She had been abandoned. The initial shock threatened to overwhelm her, to drag her down into a pit of despair so deep she would never escape. Tears streamed down Anna's face, blurring the already bleak landscape. She sank to the ground, her back against the rough wooden wall of the cabin, and wept. She wept for her lost dreams, for her shattered hopes, for the future that had been so cruelly snatched away. But as the sun began to set, casting long, eerie shadows across the barren field, a flicker of defiance ignited within her. She was not a wilting flower, easily crushed by misfortune. She was made of sterner stuff. Her grandmother's shawl, wrapped tightly around her shoulders, seemed to whisper words of encouragement, reminding her of the strength and resilience that ran through her blood. She couldn't give up. She wouldn't. Caleb may have abandoned her, but she would not abandon herself. She had come too far, sacrificed too much to simply turn around and go home defeated. This land, this cabin, this life, it might not be what she had imagined, but it was hers now, and she would fight for it. Wiping away her tears, Anna stood up, her legs shaky but her resolve firm. The first order of business was to make the cabin habitable. She pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. The interior was dark and dusty, filled with cobwebs and the musty smell of neglect. It was a far cry from the cozy home she had envisioned, but it was shelter. She spent the next few hours cleaning, scrubbing, and airing out the cabin. She swept away the dirt and grime, chased out the mice, and patched the holes in the walls with scraps of fabric. As she worked, a sense of purpose began to fill her, replacing the despair with a quiet determination. That night, she slept on the floor, using her trunk as a pillow and her shawl as a blanket. It was cold and uncomfortable, but she didn't mind. She was safe, she was alive, and she had a plan. In the morning, she would explore the land, assess her resources, and figure out how to survive. She knew nothing about farming, but she was willing to learn. She would ask for help, she would read books, she would work tirelessly until she turned this barren field into a thriving garden. She thought of Caleb, his smiling face now a distant memory. She felt a pang of anger, a surge of resentment, but she refused to let him define her. She would prove him wrong. She would show him that she was more than just a mail-order bride, more than just a woman waiting to be rescued. She was strong, she was capable, and she was determined to make a life for herself, with or without him. The West might be wild and life might be hard, but Anna was ready for the challenge. She would not only survive, she would thrive. Her journey had just begun, and this time she was in charge of her own destiny. The vastness of the field was daunting. Anna stood at its edge, the morning sun beating down on her back, and felt a familiar wave of despair creep in. Where to even begin? She had never farmed a day in her life. Her hands, calloused from factory work, were ill-suited to the task of taming this wild land. The soil was hard and dry, cracked and unforgiving. She found a rusty shovel in the shed, its handle splintered and worn, and began to dig. Each scoop of earth was a struggle, her muscles aching, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Hours passed, and she had barely made a dent in the seemingly endless expanse of the field. Doubt nodded her. What was she doing? Was this just a fool's errand? Maybe Caleb had been right to leave. Maybe this land was cursed, destined to remain barren and desolate forever. She remembered her grandmother's stories of hardship and resilience, of women who had faced even greater challenges and emerged victorious. She thought of her own reasons for leaving her homeland, the dreams she had carried across the ocean. She couldn't give up now. Not when she had come so far. She persisted, digging and tilling, her body screaming in protest. She learned to read the land, to feel the moisture in the soil, to anticipate the changing weather. She discovered the rhythm of the seasons, the slow, steady pulse of life that throbbed beneath the surface of the earth. Loneliness was her constant companion. Days turned into weeks and she saw no one. The silence of the prairie was both beautiful and terrifying. She missed the bustle of the city, the comforting murmur of human voices. She longed for someone to share her struggles, to offer a word of encouragement, to simply acknowledge her existence. Sometimes at night, she would sit by the window, gazing at the stars, and wonder if she had made a mistake. Was it possible to build a life on her own in this isolated wilderness? Was she strong enough to face the challenges that lay ahead? The doubts were relentless, but so was her determination. She refused to be defeated. She would learn to farm. She would coax life from this barren land, and she would prove to herself, and to anyone who doubted her, that she was capable of anything she set her mind to. The sun, the earth, the wind, they were her only companions now, and she would learn to work with them, to harness their power, to create a future for herself in this wild and unforgiving land. Each sunrise brought a renewed sense of purpose, a fresh opportunity to prove her strength, one shovelful of earth at a time. Just when Anna's hope began to dwindle, a wagon appeared on the horizon, breaking the monotony of the landscape. As it drew closer, she could make out two figures, a woman with a kind, weathered face and a young boy perched beside her. They stopped in front of the cabin, the woman offering a warm smile. "Welcome, dear," she said, her voice raspy but gentle. "I'm Martha, and this here's my son, Billy. We heard you'd arrived." "Heard about Caleb." Anna's heart sank. "So everyone knew." She nodded, her cheeks burning with shame. Martha, sensing her discomfort, quickly changed the subject. "We brought you some seeds. Beans, corn, and squash. Figured you'd be needing them." Anna's eyes widened. I don't have any money to pay you." Martha chuckled. "Money ain't everything, dear. I hear tell you're handy with a needle and thread. My son's breeches have seen better days and I could use a new quilt. We can trade." Relief washed over Anna. She could sew. That was something she knew how to do. "I would be happy to," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Over the next few weeks, Martha and other neighbors began to visit, offering seeds, tools, and advice in exchange for Anna's sewing skills. She mended clothes, patched quilts, and even made a few simple dresses for the local women. As she worked, she listened to their stories, learning about the challenges and joys of life on the prairie. Through these conversations, she also learned more about Caleb. The gossip painted a less than flattering picture. He was known as a dreamer, a gambler, and a man who was always chasing the next big thing. He had borrowed money from several neighbors, promising to repay them when his gold mines struck it rich. He had a reputation for being unreliable and irresponsible. The news stung, but it also helped Anna to understand. He wasn't the man she had imagined. He was flawed, perhaps even foolish. But she couldn't dwell on the past. She had to focus on the present, on building a future for herself. The community's support was invaluable. They taught her how to plant, how to weed, how to care for the crops. They shared their knowledge, their experience, and their friendship. Anna was no longer alone. She was part of something bigger, something stronger. As the seeds sprouted and the first green shoots emerged from the soil, Anna felt a surge of hope. She was not just surviving. She was thriving. She was building a life, not just for herself, but for the community that had embraced her. The gossip about Caleb continued, but it no longer defined her. She was Anna, the woman who had come to the West as a mail-order bride and stayed to become a farmer, a seamstress, and a valued member of the community. Her strength was surprising everyone. The summer months were long and arduous, filled with back-breaking work under the scorching sun. Anna toiled tirelessly in the field, watering, weeding, and protecting her crops from pests and the unpredictable prairie weather. There were days when she felt like giving up, when the heat and the labor seemed unbearable. But she remembered the faces of her neighbors, their kindness, and their belief in her, and she kept going. As the weeks passed, the crops flourished. The bean plants climbed tall and strong, their leaves reaching towards the sky. The corn stalks grew thick and heavy, their ears bursting with kernels. The squash vines sprawled across the ground, their golden fruit ripening in the sun. Anna had never seen anything so beautiful. It was a miracle, a testament to her hard work and the generosity of the land. She walked through the field each day, marveling at the bounty that surrounded her. She felt a sense of pride and accomplishment that she had never experienced before. When harvest time arrived, Anna knew she couldn't do it alone. She asked her neighbors for help and they readily agreed. Together, they gathered the beans, husked the corn, and harvested the squash. The field was alive with laughter and camaraderie as they worked side by side, sharing stories and celebrating their success. The harvest was even more bountiful than Anna had imagined. The barn was overflowing with beans, corn, and squash. She had enough to feed herself and her neighbors through the winter, with plenty left over to sell at the market in town. Word of Anna's success spread quickly throughout the region. People came from miles around to see the mail-order bride who had transformed a barren field into a thriving farm. They admired her grit, her determination, and her unwavering spirit. Anna was no longer just a stranger in a strange land. She was a respected member of the community, a symbol of hope and resilience. She had proven that anything was possible with hard work, determination, and the support of good neighbors. As she stood in the middle of her overflowing barn, surrounded by the fruits of her labor, Anna felt a sense of peace and contentment that she had never known before. She had faced adversity and overcome it. She had built a life for herself, not just surviving, but thriving. And she knew with unwavering certainty that her future was bright. The harvest was a reward not just for her labor, but for her courage, her strength, and her unwavering belief in herself. It was a promise of a new beginning, a testament to the power of the human spirit. She could feel it in her bones that all the effort was worth it. Anna was preparing to load the wagon, the golden corn glistening in the morning sun. The market was expecting her, and she was eager to secure a good price for her harvest. She had plans for the money, new tools, a sturdier roof for the cabin, and perhaps even a small luxury, a bolt of fine fabric for a new dress. Suddenly, a figure appeared on the dusty road, a lone man trudging towards the farm. As he drew closer, Anna recognized him. It was Caleb. He looked gaunt and weary, his clothes tattered and torn. The hopeful glint that she remembered from the photograph was gone, replaced by a haunted look in his eyes. He stopped in front of her, his head bowed in shame. "Anna," he said, his voice barely a whisper. I know I don't deserve it, but I had to come back." Anna stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. A mixture of anger, resentment, and a strange sense of pity washed over her. She had imagined this moment countless times, rehearsing the scathing words she would say, the righteous indignation she would unleash. But now, faced with the reality of his broken state, she found herself strangely silent. "I failed," he continued, his voice cracking with emotion. "The gold mine, it was a bust. I lost everything. I'm broke, Anna. Penniless." He looked up at her, his eyes pleading for forgiveness. "I heard about your harvest. I heard you turned this place around. I was hoping, maybe, you could find it in your heart to forgive me." Anna remained silent, her gaze fixed on his face. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the remorse etched on his features. But she also saw the weakness, the lack of responsibility that had led him to abandon her in the first place. "I know I have no right to ask," he said, "but do you have any food or work? I'm starving. I've been traveling for days." The neighbors had warned her that he had been asking around town about her, and that he was likely to come back. She had tried to prepare for this, but she had no idea that the reality would be this hard. She looked at the overflowing wagon, at the fruits of her labor, at the life she had built without him. And she knew that she couldn't simply forgive him and welcome him back with open arms. He had made his choice, and she had made hers. "The harvest is mine, Caleb," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. "I earned it with my own sweat and tears." She considered what she would do. She would not turn him away entirely, but she would not give him what he expected. The game had changed. Caleb's shoulders slumped, his face falling further. He likely expected to be welcomed back, perhaps not as a hero, but at least as a forgiven partner. Anna knew that was not going to happen. "I will not turn you away completely, Caleb. I will offer you a deal," Anna said, her voice clear and steady, surprising even herself with its firmness. "I have more grain than I need. I was planning to sell half of it at the market. I will sell that half to you." Caleb's head snapped up, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Sell it to me? But I have no money, Anna. You know that." "Exactly," Anna replied. "You said yourself that you were penniless. But you need food, and I have food to spare. So I will sell you half of my harvest at a fair price, the same price I would get at the market. You can work off the debt right here on this farm." Caleb looked confused, then a flicker of understanding crossed his face. "You mean you want me to work for you?" "That is exactly what I mean," Anna confirmed. "You can earn your keep, and you can earn the grain that you need to survive. It will be hard work, Caleb, the kind of work you have never done before. But it will be honest work, and it will give you a chance to prove yourself." Anna watched him carefully, gauging his reaction. She knew that this was a risky proposition. He could refuse, he could try to take the grain by force, or he could simply disappear again. But she had a feeling that he was too broken, too desperate to do any of those things. "And what if I refuse?" Caleb asked, his voice laced with a hint of defiance. "Then you are free to leave," Anna replied, shrugging her shoulders. "But I will not give you anything for free. I have worked too hard for this harvest to simply give it away." Caleb hesitated, his gaze shifting from Anna to the overflowing wagon and back again. He knew that he had no other options. He was at her mercy, and he knew it. "All right," he said finally, his voice resigned. "I will do it. I will work for you." Anna nodded, her expression unreadable. "Good. Then we have a deal. But understand this, Caleb, things have changed. This is my farm now. I make the decisions, and you will follow my orders. Can you agree to that?" Caleb swallowed hard, his pride clearly wounded. But he nodded again. "Yes, Anna, I agree." Anna knew that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, conflicts, and perhaps even more disappointments. But she was ready. She had faced the worst that life could throw at her, and she had emerged stronger and more resilient than ever before. She was in control of her own destiny, and she would not let anyone, not even Caleb, take that away from her. The deal was made. The old life was gone. Caleb, with a mix of resentment and resignation, began to work. He was awkward and clumsy at first, his hands unused to the demanding labor. Anna, however, was a firm but fair boss. She showed him what to do, corrected his mistakes, and pushed him to work harder. She gave him food and a place to sleep in the barn, but she made it clear that he had to earn everything he received. As the days turned into weeks, Caleb slowly began to adapt. He learned to swing an axe, to milk a cow, and to mend fences. The physical labor toughened him up both physically and mentally. He started to take pride in his work, in the sweat on his brow, and in the calluses on his hands. He was still far from the man Anna had dreamed of marrying, but he was slowly becoming a more responsible and reliable person. Meanwhile, Anna took the remaining half of her harvest to the market and sold it for a handsome profit. She carefully counted the money, her heart filled with a sense of accomplishment. This was her money, earned through her own hard work and determination. She would use it wisely. First, she paid off the debts that Caleb had left behind, the money he had borrowed from the neighbors and never repaid. It was a matter of principle, a way of restoring her own honor and the reputation of the farm. The neighbors were grateful, impressed by her integrity and her willingness to take responsibility for Caleb's past mistakes. Next, she invested in new tools and equipment for the farm, a better plow, a stronger wagon, and a supply of seeds for the next planting season. She repaired the roof of the cabin, making it more secure and weatherproof. She even bought a small wood-burning stove, which would make the winter months much more bearable. Finally, she allowed herself a small luxury, a bolt of fine blue fabric, which she used to sew a beautiful new dress. It was a symbol of her success, a reminder of how far she had come. She was no longer just a penniless mail-order bride, abandoned in the middle of nowhere. She was a landowner, a farmer, and a businesswoman. She had built a life for herself against all odds, and she had earned the respect of her community. As she looked at Caleb working diligently in the field, she felt a flicker of something that might have been pity, or perhaps even a hint of affection. He was still a flawed man, but he was trying. And she was giving him a chance to redeem himself. But more importantly, she was securing her own future, ensuring that she would never again be dependent on anyone but herself. The money from the harvest was not just a means to an end, it was a symbol of her independence, her resilience, and her unwavering spirit. It was a promise of a brighter tomorrow. The farm was hers, and she would keep it that way. As the seasons changed, Anna and Caleb settled into a routine. He continued to work on the farm, gradually earning back the cost of the grain he had purchased. He never fully regained Anna's trust or affection, but they developed a working partnership, a mutual respect born out of shared labor and the necessity of survival. Anna realized that she no longer needed Caleb to define her. She had come to the West seeking a husband, a home, and a family, but she had found something far more valuable, herself. She was strong, she was capable, and she was independent. She could build a life on her own, with or without a man. The neighbors continued to support her, offering friendship and assistance whenever she needed it. She had become a vital part of the community, a role model for other women who had faced adversity and overcome it. She was Anna, the farmer, the seamstress, the businesswoman, the survivor. As winter approached, Anna sat by the window, gazing at the snow-covered fields. The cabin was warm and cozy, the shelves were stocked with food, and the barn was filled with hay for the animals. She had everything she needed. Caleb came in from the barn, his face flushed from the cold. He nodded to her, a silent acknowledgement of their shared existence. He was no longer the carefree dreamer she had once known. He was a changed man, humbled by his failures and grateful for the second chance she had given him. Anna knew that their relationship would never be what she had initially hoped for. They would likely never be husband and wife in the truest sense of the word. But they could be partners, working together to build a better future. She had proven to herself that she could survive on her own. And maybe, just maybe, she could even find happiness in this unexpected life she had created. She knew one thing for sure: she was staying on the farm. This was her home now, her land, her legacy. She had arrived in the West as a mail-order bride, seeking a new beginning. And she had found one, but not in the way she had expected. She had found it within herself, in her own strength and resourcefulness. She was Anna, the woman who had turned adversity into opportunity, who had transformed a barren field into a thriving farm, and who had built a life of independence and self-sufficiency with or without a husband. She looked forward to the spring, to a new planting, and to all the possibilities that lay ahead. She would stay and she would prosper. Her new beginning was here.